On your Friday episode of Locked On Raptors, Derik Queen and Kasparas Jakučionis are a pair of offense-first prospects I've been out on during the draft process, but what do I think upon a second viewing?
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Friday, June the 13th. Happy title anniversary, everybody. 6 years. The time has flown. And I am, of course, I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 11 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on Blue Sky. You can find the show on Instagram, and you can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. Link in the description of the podcast. Come be part of our listener community. Lots of good stuff going on over there. Talking draft, talking finals, talking trade scuttlebutt, and everything in between. Video games. Switch 2's out. Come talk about some games, baby. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And we're off and running here on my final show before I go on a many-week hiatus, probably like 6 weeks, something like that, for paternity leave. I'm going to be a dad next week, and so this will be my last show. Handing the keys over to Vivek Jacob starting next week. He will be with you, and we'll take you through the draft and free agency. I'll pop in once in a while when, baby duty kind of allows for it in little pockets, within the day. But for the most part, Big V will be driving the bus, and so this is my last show for a bit. And for this episode, I wanted to take an opportunity to talk about a couple of prospects who I've been pretty out on when it comes to their fit with the Toronto Raptors throughout the last couple of months, thinking about the draft. I feel like I've been thinking about this draft for like a year at this point. I guess in some ways we have been, but Derik Queen and Kasparas Jakučionis in particular, I'm going to get into sort of a reviewing of my takes on these guys. I sat down and watched a lot of footage of these guys this morning, caught up on some more scouting reports, things like that. And I'm just going to kind of dig into, maybe things I'm missing. And here's the thing is like, look, they're guys I kind of sort of made my mind up early on with, and I haven't really gone back and visited them for a couple of weeks, even months. Like, it's been a little while since I've dug into Derik Queen and Kasparas Jakučionis because I kind of just watched them originally. I was like, not for me. But ultimately, look, there's a reason I do a podcast, and there's a reason I'm not in the front office. And I trust the Toronto Raptors front office that if they do draft one of these guys, they see something that I'm not seeing. And so I went back to try to see, hey, is there anything I'm not appreciating about what Jakučionis and Derik Queen do? We'll get into that as the show goes along. I also want to get into a mailbag question from a listener, which I think is a pretty interesting one to kind of close off the show as it relates to these two prospects, which we'll wrap up with a little bit later on. But let's start by talking about Derik Queen. If you're not familiar with Derik Queen, he's a projected lottery pick big man, played for Maryland this year, obviously had that huge game winner, I think against Michigan State in the tournament. That was sort of his big highlight moment of the season with Maryland, his 1 year in college. He averaged 16 points, 9 boards, 2 assists, and a block and a steal. He shot 16% from three on just 1 3 a game. A little concerning, 58% on twos, 59% true shooting overall, 77% from the line. And as I've said before, talking about Derik Queen, I really want to like Derik Queen. He very much is the type of guy who I tend to gravitate towards. He's like such a 2005 coded offensive player, mid-range, post moves, counters, pivots, all this stuff. It's a lot of really fun stuff. As a child of the mid-2000s NBA, I have a lot of time for guys like that. But the modernity of his game, I think, is an open question. And I think some of the other stuff within his game, the lack of shooting obviously is a big thing, but the defensive issues, which we'll talk about again here today, have been things that I've kind of just had Derik Queen on my do not draft list for bigs. I didn't even have him on my top 10 of potential Raptors targets a couple weeks ago when I did my top 10 big board at number 9. Other bigs I like in this class more include Thomas Sorber, who I think just has like a more modern, connective big man style game with way better defensive tools. Danny Wolf, I think, as an offensive creative type, very unorthodox player, but the creation, the handle, the shooting upside, I really like with Danny Wolf. And I think the defensive concerns are, no worse than they are with Derik Queen. And he's also just like a lot bigger as a guy. Maxime Reynaud is a guy who I've really liked, a really fun offensive package for him. I'm a little worried about his defense and size and strength too, but he's a guy I'd probably have ahead of Derik Queen if I'm picking my, from all the bigs in this class. And then Kaman Malawash, of course, is my number one prospect for the Raptors at 9. He's the guy I got in the Locked On NBA mock draft, which drops next week, by the way, in full. It's really great. You should check it out. But if Derik Queen is on the board and Kaman Malawash is not, there is a case for the Raptors to consider him. And look, some of the stuff he does, like I've said, really like him and a lot of the things he brings to the table. His post game is really impressive. The spins, the counters, the pivots, the way it's very compact. It's really tough to guard. He keeps his defenders off balance because he can spin both ways super effectively. He's really good just like facing up. He can make stuff happen when he catches the ball at the elbow, even on the perimeter. He's really good at just kind of turning that in, making something from nothing essentially when he catches the ball without much shooting gravity to help his cause either, which is a pretty big deal. I think the passing with him, I'm a little hit and miss on the passing. He had more turnovers than assists this year, 1.9 assists to 2.4 turnovers. I think the turnovers mostly kind of rear their ugly head when he's getting doubled in the post and is trying to pass out of that. Bit of a, I really like what he does in the short roll as a passer. When he's face up, kind of facing the basket, dribbling, has like a live handle. I actually like his passing quite a bit. I think he can catch at the nail, make plays, and the attention he draws as a guy that everyone knows can score from 18 feet and in really opens up the baseline for cutters that he's really good at picking out with lobs and bounce passes, stuff like that. I think also when he's facing up on the perimeter, say he's on like the 45s on the wings, he's thrown some really beautiful cross-court skip passes to shooters. That's all really nice. But when he gets into situations where he's seeing multiple bodies, he gets into some trouble. I think his passing is very sort of delicate is the word I would use. He doesn't put a lot of mustard on his passing. It's a lot of just kind of floating, lofting, soft little passes. And in short roll situations, that works really nicely because you're kind of duping the defense and passing over guys, throwing lob, stuff like that. But when you're in the post and you're trying to turn that advantage that is drawing two to the ball into something, he's just not great at picking out those right next passes. He's not great at finding like sort of the difficult pass, the one pass away to the wing, then the swing, fine. But trying to hit that skip pass across court, he threw a lot of his turnovers in those situations when you go back and watch the tape. And again, shout out to Hardwood Hoops Central NBA Draft Green Room, the longest YouTube channel title of all time. Really fantastic. It's just like 3 hours of Derik Queen tape. You can just go and peruse. Really fun stuff. That was kind of what I dug into this morning. But yeah, offensively, again, the face-up stuff is really interesting. The elephant in the room is that so much of his work comes in the same areas that Scottie Barnes operates. And that is where the fit with the Raptors really falls apart for me. I just think those two playing together could be supremely clunky unless Barnes figures out once again how to shoot from deep at a mid-30s to high 30s clip like he did at the start of his third season, the 2023-24 year, where him and Pascal Siakam are kind of figuring out and grooving with one another. Siakam was creating a lot of great looks for Scottie in the corners on the wings, and Scottie was taking them confidently, and they were going down. Didn't see that last year. It wasn't just the pull-ups that dragged down Scottie's three-point shooting last year. He was also really bad on catch and shoots. And unless he's good at catch and shoots, I think the Derik Queen partnership could be really tough stuff. And then the defensive stuff, look, there is stuff that Derik Queen does defensively that's really good. I think his hands are basically where he derives all of his defensive value. He's really good at swatting the ball out when guys bring it low. He's really great with dig downs and just kind of disrupting with really strong hands. He's like a big man version of Fred VanVleet almost, where he has these sort of steals that are blocks that are kind of steals and blocks. Like it's hard to kind of determine how you write those down if you're a scorer, like it was with Fred VanVleet, who used to get all these blocks that were basically steals. Very similar thing, but for a guy who's 6'10". But for me, I think his best defensive role is as that sort of dig down guy helping in from the corners. And to me, if you're drafting him as a center, which you would be on this team with the way this team is oriented, I think that becomes a real problem because Scottie Barnes, his best role is as a helper, as a guy who can come over and protect the rim. And I think Barnes does way more defensive pop as like a help side, explosive rim protector, shot blocker than Derik Queen does. Queen, again, is more sort of ground bound in the way he does everything on both offense and defense. And so I think you run into the positional problem with Derik Queen defensively with the Raptors. And so while I think the hands are great, I'm not sure you're really getting the most out of your defensive ecosystem if you have Derik Queen kind of forced to play the 4 on defense and you're putting Scottie Barnes essentially at the 5 in, as like your main pick and roll defender and the guy who's sort of the first line of defense at the rim. I don't think that's the best use of Scottie Barnes. And then you have Derik Queen, who's going to be prone to maybe losing faster fours off the bounce and getting turned around. He's not great in space. He's pretty slow laterally, all that stuff. And so that's where the problem is for me. I think Derik Queen has the juice to be a good NBA player, but to me, he's sort of like the offensive inverse of Colin Murray-Boyles, where it's just the fit with the Raptors is really tough. It's just like I like Colin Murray-Boyles as a prospect too. Defensively, I think he's going to be awesome. But again, the offensive fit with the Raptors is tricky. And I think with Queen, he's the kind of guy who needs like a blank slate team, a team that's an open canvas that can build the team around his strengths. The Raptors are too far along in their roster build to just kind of seamlessly plop Derik Queen in and give him a blank slate to work and let him go cook. I think with Scottie Barnes there, I think with even Brandon Ingram, with the way he likes to handle the ball, I just think it'd be tough for Derik Queen to get the most out of himself playing on the Raptors. Certainly with some second units, I think it'd be fun running the bench with, Jacoby Walter, Grady Dick, Jamal Shed. Like you could have some fun stuff there. But if you're picking at number 9, I think you want to aim a little higher than that. And I just don't see a world in which a Scottie Barnes, Derik Queen front line has enough balance offense and defense wise and spacing wise to be successful in the long term. And so that's where it falls apart for me a little bit. But again, I think Queen ends up on the right team. If he goes to the Wizards or the Nets, a team that can orient their team around him, I think he's got a real shot to be good. I just don't know if the Raptors give him that shot. I liked him more upon this sort of revisitation, which, I expected. I think, you kind of dig your heels in on guys sometimes and think, oh, well, I know this guy inside and out. We're all idiots. I'm a dum-dum. I don't know anything. And like the more you watch a guy, the more you come to appreciate the subtleties of the game that make him good. But I also just came back to, I just think the fit's just so clunky with the best players on the Raptors. And I'm sorry, you have to bake that into your calculation when you're drafting somebody. And I think Queen doesn't offer enough defensively to make it worth it, where the offense, you're just not going to get the most out of his offense. And as we're going to get into in the final segment of the show, you have to be like outlier good on offense for the defensive questions to sort of cease to matter. And I don't think that's going to be the case, especially on a team in the Raptors where his defensive concerns will be sort of amplified by the lack of positionality and the way the team is built. And the offense might not really have a chance to flourish because of who he'd be playing with. We'll come back on the other side. We're going to talk about Kasparas Jakučionis, who has become something of a favorite of a lot of folks in the Locked On Raptors Discord over the past week or so, really circling around on him as a guy who can bring some offensive juice to the Raptors. And as much as I really wanted to like Jakučionis more on this second revisitation of my feelings on him, I came away even maybe more concerned about what the fit would be with the Raptors. We'll get into Jakučionis coming up in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by a new sponsor, Olipop. Olipop is a new kind of soda made for people who love the classic taste of soda but want something that supports their health, which is 2 to 5 grams of sugar and 9 grams of prebiotic fiber in every can. Olipop is reimagining soda in a way that's better for your gut. Look, I am what you would call a fizzy drinks boy. I love myself a sparkling water, and of course, I can't help but go for one of them heavy sodas once in a while. I know it's bad for me. I shouldn't be drinking my calories this much, but I just love that fizz, baby. And Olipop is a wonderful alternative. I've had Olipop before. It's sometimes something I'll grab when I'm coming home after, a Raptors game, and I go to the store in the Union Station and grab myself an Olipop for the ride. It's really great. And I know that it's also going to help me feel kind of all right the next day. Maybe I've had a couple drinks, maybe I'm in town seeing some friends or something, and I just want to kind of reset my day before the day starts. Olipop is a wonderful way to do that as well. Traditional soda is loaded with a lot of sugar, like 39 grams of Coke, or 39 grams of sugar in a regular Coke, 44 grams in an orange Fanta. Olipop flips that script with just a fraction of the sugar, no artificial sweeteners, and gut-friendly ingredients like Ollie Smart, a blend shown to support digestive and overall health. It's soda that tastes like the real thing, but actually does something good for your body. Get a free can of Olipop. Just buy any 2 cans in store. They'll reimburse you for 1. Head to drinkolipop.com/LockedOnNBA to claim your free can and find Olipop near you. That's drinkolipop.com/LockedOnNBA. Back at it here on your Friday episode of Locked On Raptors, talking about Kasparas Jakučionis, who is the 6'5", 6'6" point guard from Illinois, who again, I really wanted to like more on this second viewing of Kasparas Jakučionis. I really did. He's been a hot name in the Locked On Raptors Discord of late. He's been a guy who, for those who think the Raptors need some offensive juice, which, hey, like the Raptors do need some offensive juice. They were a bottom 5 offense this year. I think a lot of that is due to, their point guard not being available for the first half of the year and Brandon Ingram not playing at all and the team not really giving a damn down the last 20 games of the season or so. But they clearly need to rev up the offense a little bit. As much as their system works to create good shots, they don't convert good shots. And so finding someone who can finish, someone who can create more good shots from nothing, like not so much leaning on the system all the time, I think is very important. And I just don't know if Kasparas Jakučionis is the guy to do that. For, those who are unfamiliar with Jakučionis, 6'5", 6'6", played for Illinois from Lithuania, about 16 points a game, 5 boards, 5 assists, thereabouts. Struggle with turnovers. It was about 4.7 turnovers or assists to 3.7 turnovers. That is. So not quite a 1-to-1, but little turnover prone for my liking. And look, the passing is really fun. There's like a lot of fun, cool passes in his package. He'll throw some audacious stuff. And I love dudes who throw cool ballsy passes. It's a lot of fun to watch. But again, I come back to when you're looking for an offensive engine for this team, I think you got to be aiming higher than what I think Kasparas Jakučionis is going to be in the NBA. And for those who aren't familiar, like the big problem for Jakučionis in college, and to be fair, his season was kind of into little two segments. He was really good at the start of the year, got hurt, maybe came back early and wasn't so good to close the season. But I do think no matter what time of the year you drop into a Kasparas Jakučionis game for, you'll see the same problem, which is he just really struggles to create separation and turn the corner in one-on-one situations. He can work pick and roll just fine, right? Like he can take a screen, get downhill, make it work. But I think that's like the case for most guys. Like Emmanuel Quickley is very good at taking a screen, getting downhill and making it work, right? He has the floater game. He gets paint touches and sprays out for threes from there. Like I don't think there's much different in, sort of how both of those guys go and create through pick and roll. In fact, Quickley over the course of his career has had some seasons where he's been like top 2 percentile as a pick and roll scorer, as the ball handler. And I think he's pretty refined there. The pull-up shooting is really helpful. Kasparas Jakučionis, I think, to his credit, I don't think he shot in college the way he's going to shoot in the NBA. He shot 32% from deep. He also shot like 32% on pull-ups and like a really difficult diet of pull-ups. And he's also an 85% free throw shooter. I think he's going to be a good NBA shooter, maybe a very good NBA shooter. Off the ball, didn't really quite get him to fall like you'd like him to, but I do think that's something that'll come around. Again, the touch feels like it's there. And the diet of shots he took for Illinois was extremely difficult. He takes a lot of step backs, a lot of pull-up stuff. Really loves that sort of step back going left. That is, a great shot to have. It's also a difficult way to kind of subsist. And that is really where a lot of Kasparas Jakučionis' scoring came from. It was this sort of difficult shot diet because he just can't create easy looks for himself. He really, like in single coverage, like there are so many sequences when you watch his highlights back from this year where he's just got a guy on him, just a regular old college basketball defender, and he'll take 1 or 2 dribbles. Either the dribble's going to get poked loose because it's a little bit loose for a guy who has the ball in his hands as much as he does, or he's just like not gaining an advantage and he's got to reset, kick it back and get the ball back and kind of try something else, call up a screen or something like that. The one-on-one, create something from nothing stuff is just not there. And I think that's the ingredient missing from the Raptors offense, which, hey, Brandon Ingram might help with big time, to be fair. I think, the Raptors have plenty of guys who can get easy looks off through the system of the offense, right? Taking advantages when you run dribble handoffs or pick and roll or coming off of pin downs or, cutting baseline, stuff like that. Like the Raptors are a machine of good shots. They just don't hit them. And I don't know if Kasparas Jakučionis helps them create something from nothing any better than they already do. The issues turning the corner are very real. The paint touch, like he just does not get to the paint really at all. And when he does score at the rim, which, once in a while he'll do it, but like, so often the finishes at the rim are these like miraculous, like skying through 3 dudes, just like seemingly putting every ounce of strength into his body to put the ball up and score. I don't think you can count on that being a thing you can lean on against NBA level athletes. And so that's where my concern comes in. A 25% turnover rate is also really, really rough stuff. Not very good. And it takes a lot to counteract that. And I just don't know if he does enough there on offense. He's a very below the rim player. He's not getting up and dunking or anything like that. And to me, as much as he's branded as a point guard, I feel like he's way more of a two guard than a point guard in the NBA, considering the lack of ability to create advantages. I think he's going to be fine at sort of continuing advantages, right? Like within the Raptors scheme, if he's playing off ball, someone creates an advantage on one side, swings to the weak side, Kasparas gets the ball. I think you can do something with that and continue the sequence and make something happen. But as far as just creating stuff from nothing, I just don't think that's part of his skill set. It really wasn't in college all that much. And in the NBA, the defenders are just better. The athletes are just better. And your weaknesses are going to get poked at. And speaking of weaknesses, I mean, the defensive stuff with Kasparas Jakučionis is genuinely concerning. I think he's going to have a really hard time guarding point guards in the NBA. Just don't think he's fast enough. Point guard play is too good. There are too many excellent fast guards out there. I think he's going to have a hell of a time. I don't think he's someone who could play the Darko Rajakovic high pickup point defense, right? Like he's someone who's going to get left in the dust by a lot of quicker guards. He's going to have to be more conservative the way he plays. And I'm just not sure that fits. And so, yeah, I go back to the point of I'm not sure Kasparas Jakučionis is actually a point guard in the NBA. I think he's a potentially very good off-ball shooter, advantage continuer, that type of stuff. But look at the Raptors roster. They're already loaded up with two guards who kind of do that stuff. And some of them do some of those things better than Kasparas does right now. And so I just don't think you're getting the most out of the pick if you're taking Jakučionis. Like I think if you're taking a guard at 9, it has to be because you think they can become the engine of your offense. It's why I'm in on the Jeremiah Fears thing. If he falls to number 9, I think the upside with him, because of his rim pressure, because of the quality of his handle, because of his speed, and his just like general feel and production in an age where he should have been in, a senior in high school, I think there's enough indicators there that suggest, hey, like with enough time and reps and, some strengthening up, bulking up, the 18-year-old frame he currently occupies, like Jeremiah Fears could be the kind of lead guard who guides an offense and sets the table for everybody else. I don't quite see that with Kasparas Jakučionis. And again, the defensive stuff with him is just like very, very concerning. And he doesn't feel like a kind of guy who's going to be good enough on offense to justify the defense being up there. I think the Raptors got to be aiming higher with this pick at number 9. And I don't really see where that counterbalancing of the defensive problems comes because of the issues he's had on offense just in college, right? Again, I think he's going to end up shooting it well. And if the 3-point shot, like the pull-up 3 really hits and he's like a high-end 36, 37, 38% pull-up shooter, then okay, things change, maybe drastically. Maybe he becomes a guy who can get into the teeth of the defense more easily. Maybe the handle tightens up a little bit. But just to me, I think it's more of just like his athletic build is his athletic build type of situation. And I'm not quite sure I see it with Jakučionis as like a lead guard who can guide an offense the way the Raptors kind of need one to. So yeah, and yeah, the defensive stuff is real concerning. And on that note, I want to come back on the other side and get into a mailbag question from a listener that came in yesterday regarding this concept of defense versus offense and the NBA Finals and Tyrese Haliburton and the Pacers maybe kind of putting this question on its head from where we thought it's been over the years. We'll get to that to close out the show in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by friends over at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways to play than ever, and you can play smart and win big. And it's not just the NBA, of course. The Stanley Cup Finals are absolutely insane. 3 overtime games. One was a double OT game. And last night, the Oilers came back from down 3-0 to win in overtime. Bonkers stuff. Hey, maybe one of the Panthers or Oilers gets out to a lead in Game 5 on Saturday, and you want to make a live in-game bet on the other team coming back to win. Might be a good time to do it, considering how insane and nonsensical this Stanley Cup Final's been. You can do it all over at FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's a perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Wrapping it up here on your Friday edition of Locked On Raptors. Again, this will be my last show for a handful of weeks as our pal Vivek Jacob will step in on Monday and take over while I am cleaning diapers and stuff. Let's go to Stago in the Locked On Raptors Discord, who asked a question yesterday after the mailbag podcast that we recorded with Katie, which was a blast, by the way. Go listen to that one if you haven't yet. But Stago asked, does Tyrese Haliburton playing solid defense in the finals officially end the offense and defense are equal debate? Both Denver and Indiana were able to up their defensive intensity when the time was right. Could Grady and IQ, for example, step it up on D in the same way? Look, yeah, Tyrese Haliburton's been awesome on defense in these playoffs, at least awesome for his standards, right? He's not someone that you can just go pick at and poke at and, kind of spam your offense through. And that's been, a big reason why the Pacers are where they are. I also think, using Tyrese Haliburton, and in the case of the question here, Nikola Jokic with the Denver Nuggets, who, by the way, Jokic has graded out as a good defender for most of his prime. Not traditionally this incredible shutdown guy, but a smart defender, deflections monster. He's always graded out in the analytics as an excellent or good, pretty good to excellent defender, depending on the year. And the Nuggets have built good defenses around that. I think with Haliburton and Jokic, I think it's an interesting sort of question through the lens of the guys we've talked about today, Derik Queen and Kasparas Jakučionis, who, if you really, really, really squint, kind of in theory could one day occupy the archetypes that Jokic and Haliburton do. In no way, shape, or form am I saying they'll be as good as those guys, because they're not going to be. But the hub big man who has passing and post craft and sort of guile kind of guiding his game and sort of overcoming a lack of clear and obvious athleticism, and the lead guard who's maybe not the greatest downhill threat, but has pull-up juice and really interesting passing. You can squint and see how those guys, could model their games after Jokic and Haliburton. But guess what? Jokic and Haliburton are outlier one-of-one players individually. They are incredible, some of the best offensive players we have ever seen play basketball. If you sort of go by the theory of evolution over time, we're in the peak of offensive basketball right now with two of the best offensive players in that era guiding these teams to recent finals. They're just the best of the best. And to the point I was making about Kasparas Jakučionis, I think, you can level up on defense all you want and really try and lock in. At some point, your limitations are your limitations, and they're going to be poked at and revealed by really good playoff teams. And I still think there will be a time in these finals where Shai Gilgeous-Alexander starts to get his against Tyrese Haliburton, or maybe Jalen Williams starts to go to work, or they find some way to manufacture switches where they can go and punish Haliburton in other ways. I'm not against thinking that's going to happen at some point during these finals. I think with guys like Jokic and Haliburton, the thing is their offense is so incredible. They have such a command of the entire game. The entire game plays at their pace. It flows through them. They are dictating everything that's happening on the offensive end of the floor, that it counterbalances their defensive weaknesses that are still there even when they are ratcheted up to full playoff juice. Grady Dick and Emmanuel Quickley, I like those guys. They're not Haliburton or Jokic in terms of being outlier talents, right? I think we sort of look at the playoffs and the thing that just happened is always the new thing that's always going to be. And I just don't think that's true. I think the league constantly evolves. I think coaching is so sophisticated and high level that coaches are going to find counters to things that worked one year, and those things will work less well as time goes on. And I think, what seems like the new wave of, just have all offense and just have your guys try harder in the playoffs. I think that undercuts the sort of power of intensely talented players like Haliburton, like Jokic. And I also think it sort of sleeps on the Pacers in this case. Haliburton's tried, but you know why the Pacers are a good team is that their defense got really good because Aaron Nesmith and Andrew Nembhard and Pascal Siakam and Miles Turner are playing their asses off on defense, and they're on a string, and they play this beautiful connected defense. They're the reasons the Pacers defense is good. Haliburton leveling it up is the reason why there's not one clear chasm that the other team can just sort of plunge their offense down and find success. It's more the sort of collective might of the defensive players that the Pacers have that's really gotten to this level where they're this championship caliber team. They're 2 wins away from winning the title. And again, as it pertains to guys like Derik Queen and Kasparas Jakučionis, or as the question alluded to, Emmanuel Quickley and Grady Dick, I don't think any of those guys are outlier talents on offense enough to counterbalance their defensive issues, which are going to get poked at in the playoffs. We saw it in the conference finals in the Eastern Conference, right? Like Karl Anthony Towns, Jalen Brunson, they were defensive liabilities, and it was a big reason why the Knicks lost that series. Defense still is incredibly important. Just because teams are scoring more points doesn't mean that, like, in relation to the pace and the scoring efficiency around the league, that defense can't be up to the task. Like, defense is clearly a huge part of all of this in the playoffs. And I think defense is very often the thing that is going to be that weakness that gets exposed. We've talked a lot during these playoffs, a lot of think pieces from those who cover the game about this being the weak link league. A lot of that comes down to defensive liabilities getting poked at and teams not having answers for it. And that, there's obviously some offensive stuff to it too, right? If a defense is very good or even average, if a defense is average, but you have offensive players who can't take advantage of that, then that's a liability too. That's a weak link thing as well. But I think more often than not in the playoffs, you see weak defenders, mismatches, things like that end up being the thing that causes these teams to lose or win. And so, no, I don't think we're at this point where offense is just more important than defense, especially in the playoffs. I think the level of defense you have to play to hang with modern offenses is so high that it's just like the barrier for entry is incredibly high. Like, you just have to be good at defense. And yeah, you can ratchet up a little bit and try harder in the postseason, sure. But I don't think that means that you can just go into the playoffs with a bunch of hump defenders and say, yeah, well, if you just try harder, we'll be fine. Because that's not how it works. Like, you have to have good defensive integrity. You have to have good size. You have to be handsy. Like, the Thunder are in the finals not because their offense is so good. Their offense has been good in the playoffs, but for the most part, they are where they are because their defense is one of the best we've ever seen. And they could still very well win this series. I think we're acting like the Pacers are just like guaranteed and preordained to win this series. This is a long way from being over. And if the Thunder come out and are up 3-2 in the series in a few days' time, I don't think the question is then, well, is defense more important than offense? No, like, they're both very important. You got to be really excellent on both ends of the floor. And if you are a player who has defensive deficiencies, you better be an outlier offensive talent. Otherwise, you're going to get hunted, and it's going to be a problem for you in the playoffs. So, no, I don't think Grady Dick and Emmanuel Quickley can just try harder in the playoffs and everything can be fine. And I also think, like, Quickley's a fine defender for his position. I'm not too upset about that. Grady Dick, we'll see. He's still like a beanpole and needs to mature and grow and strengthen up and stuff. And hey, maybe his offense becomes outlier good, right? He's a really damn good dynamic offensive player, great off-ball shooter, lots of gravity. Maybe he's the kind of guy who can sort of counteract some of the stuff he doesn't bring defensively with his offense in the postseason, especially if you surround him with good defenders. But we're a long way from seeing that. This Raptors team is not quite at the point where we're making those evaluations just yet. Hopefully very soon. That's going to do it. Thank you so much for rocking with the show. We'll be back again, or I won't be back, but Vivek will be back on Monday. I think Katie's going to be on the show with him Monday too. So you have that to look forward to. And yeah, I will be, again, popping in where I can to talk about stuff that goes on. If the Raptors make like some massive trade, I'll probably not be able to resist hopping on at some point. But for the most part, I'm going to, try to unplug and take some time with my new little baby and my wife and my family. And it's going to be great. And so, yeah, we'll miss you very much. Doing the show every day is a real joy for me, of course, but I'll be back before you know it. And we'll round out the off season once I am back, probably sometime in late July. Thank you so much for rocking with the show. Please follow, subscribe, rate, and review. Tell a friend. It's always appreciated when you support. Join the Discord. Link in the description of the podcast, as always. That'll be rocking. I'm going to delete Discord from my phone probably because I can't be mucking it up with the sickos while I'm tending to a new baby. But, it'll still be going. I'll leave somebody in charge. Not sure who. There's a lot of deviants in there. But, yeah, we'll have that going. And, yeah, I hope you enjoy the draft and the offseason. And may Giannis end up on the Raptors for an absolute hilarious buy low. Not going to happen, but wouldn't that be cool? We'll leave it there. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. And you'll talk to Vivek on Monday. Thanks for hanging. Bye-bye. I have to hit this shot before I go off. It just feels really, really important for my psyche. He did it!